Yeah, I got a request by a fellow by the name of Fat German Bastard. That's his YouTube handle. That's not an ethnic slur or questionable parentage or anything like that. Who wanted me to comment on one of his videos where he claimed where intersubjective truth is not enough truth really to underwrite morality. Before I do that, I'd like to comment on one of his other videos. To my knowledge, he's the only person in all of this objective versus subjective morality business who actually took the time to define what he actually means when he says objective versus subjective, which I've appreciated that very much. Unfortunately, I didn't really agree with his definitions, so before I talk about morality per se, let's just get the terms straight. So I know what you're thinking. Yeah, not a dictionary rant. Normally this is like the lamest move you can possibly make. I mean, define your terms, or define what a blowjob is, or define what sex is. But the thing is, if Fat German Bastard really did define what he meant by subjective and objective, and I actually disagree with his definitions, so that's why I'm doing this. Okay, Fat German Bastard actually gives several definitions. His first definition goes as follows. A subjective statement is true or false depending upon who is making the statement. So any sentence that has like a indexical pronoun in it, like I or something like that, would fall in this category. So for example, like I like ice cream. He claims is subjective, versus Bill Clinton likes ice cream, which he claims is objective. But the thing is, it's really true. Does the sentence Bill Clinton likes ice cream, does that really not change its truth value depending on who speaks it? I mean, I can think of an example where it would. Okay, what if we're not talking about the same Bill Clinton? All right? Suppose there's a person called Bubba. Okay, Bubba has never heard of a president named Bill Clinton. But Bubba has a childhood friend who actually hated ice cream. And this other person is who he's talking about when he says Bill Clinton, right? So if I say Bill Clinton likes ice cream, I make a true statement. But if Bubba says that Bill Clinton likes ice cream, he makes a false statement. So, even if we change the truth value of a sentence by changing who's speaking that sentence, this really doesn't help us discriminate whether that sentence is subjective or objective. I mean, almost any sentence can be put in this category. But not to be deterred, Fat German Bastard actually gives another handy little test, okay, to see whether a sentence is objective or subjective. He phrases it like this, okay? If you make a statement about yourself or about something that belongs to you, it is a subjective statement. Now, I really don't agree with this definition either. I mean, a sentence like, I like ice cream seems subjective. I mean, maybe a sentence like, ice cream tastes good would be better. But what about a sentence like, I am 2 meters tall? I mean, that really doesn't seem to be terribly subjective, right? I can think of all kinds of facts about myself, which science can verify and everybody can agree on. My height, my weight, my eye color, this kind of stuff, right? Are those really subjective facts? I don't think so. So I don't really think his second definition actually works either. Okay, so my request is the following. Okay, please think through exactly what you were trying to say about a sentence when you claim that it is objective or subjective. And coming up with a watertight definition here is really harder than it looks. And in fact, my claim is that it's worthless to try to do this, okay? I don't believe that sentences divide into two cosmic categories, objective bin and a subjective bin. And, God, when he created the universe, threw these sentences into two different bins. I think that no matter what definition you try to give to objective and subjective, the definition is just going to be worthless, all right? So how do people actually use objective and subjective? Okay, so the only context in which I've actually seen the word objective used on YouTube or in real life or anywhere else is the following, okay? The only time it's used is when somebody is claiming that X is true, and X can be anything, okay? They claim that X is true, but they can't provide enough evidence to convince everybody that X is true, okay? Then, when their back is against the wall and they can't make their case any other way, they claim that X is true because it is objectively true. Okay, and that's like supposed to convince us. And you might think that like morals and math is like completely different on this, but it's really not the case. Okay, so let me give an example from both domains. Okay, so like 1 + 1 is true. Yeah, everybody agrees on this. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, yeah, everybody agrees on this. All right, but there's examples of mathematical statements that are as controversial as moral statements are. Okay, for example, the continuum hypothesis. I'm not going to give an explanation of what this is, but Kurt Gödel and Paul Cohen actually proved that you can't really prove this under our current theories of math. So yeah, nobody agrees whether the continuum hypothesis is true or not. And in the same way, nobody really agrees that the death penalty is wrong. Okay, in the USA, that is, unfortunately. People just haven't provided enough evidence one way or another. Okay, so it's not really like math is any different than ethics or any other area of human culture is any different. Okay, you have two sides in any of these things. In ethics, it's like the Bible Quran thumpers versus the apostate, heretic, atheist, latte sippers, right? But in math, you've got the Platonists versus the intuitionists. Okay, so like you'll hear statements that are very similar. Somebody will say something like, "Oh, the continuum hypothesis, it has to be true or false because the world mathematics describes the real objective world as it actually is, and the world, one way or another, determines whether the continuum hypothesis is true." In exactly the same way that you'll hear people say, "Oh, the world determines whether or not homosexual marriage is true, or the death penalty is true or false." Okay, the difference between these two things is not whether they're objective or subjective. The difference is whether we've reached agreement about them or we haven't reached agreement about them. So if you just use my handy dandy little internet YouTube dictionary here, anytime somebody tells you something is objectively true, that's just shorthand for I can't prove that X is true, but I want you to believe that X is true anyways. And anytime somebody says that X is subjectively true, that just means that, well, I don't have enough evidence to disprove X, but I don't want you to believe X anyways. So my suggestion is that we stop talking about objective and subjective altogether. And if we spent as much time trying to actually find evidence for the positions that we hold instead of calling them subjective and objective, that the whole entire level of discourse on this subject would be raised quite a bit. So thanks so much.